Many states across America are on the brink of collapse in 2025, facing crises that threaten their very survival. From skyrocketing crime rates to unmanageable state debts, these issues are no longer just headlines. They are urgent, ongoing problems. Crumbling infrastructures, skyrocketing taxes, and growing budget deficits are clear signs that these states are teetering on the edge. It's not an exaggeration. It's a reality that is unfolding right now. Across the nation, residents are witnessing industries disappear, local economies struggle, and cities become increasingly uninhabitable. Entire communities are being torn apart by rising costs, crime, and declining public services. The situation is becoming critical, and it's only a matter of time before these states face a full-scale collapse. The signs are undeniable, and the impact is already being felt. In this video, we will uncover the first 10 states at risk of falling apart in 2025. By the end, you'll understand why it's so important to act now, because this crisis is closer than you think, and waiting could leave you unprepared. Number 1. Oregon. Oregon, often hailed for its stunning natural beauty, lush forests, and laid-back vibe, is hiding a growing storm beneath its picturesque surface. While its green landscapes and vibrant cultural scene attract many, Oregon is now grappling with a series of economic and social issues that threaten to push the state into collapse. The state's housing market is a prime example of this turmoil. Real estate prices have surged to unprecedented levels, pushing the median home price close to $500,000 in cities like Portland. However, wages haven't kept up with this skyrocketing cost of living, making it harder for average residents to afford even basic housing. The gap between income and living costs is widening, and it's leaving many families struggling to keep up. The homelessness crisis is another glaring issue. In downtown Portland, tents line the streets, and entire neighborhoods are filled with visible signs of the city's failing infrastructure. Despite the city's reputation for being progressive and environmentally conscious, the local government has been unable to create lasting solutions for the growing homeless population. Every attempt to address the crisis seems to get bogged down in endless debates and slow-moving legislation. Local business owners who once relied on the vibrant foot traffic of Portland streets are closing shop as the economic recovery from the pandemic continues to lag. The bustling atmosphere that once defined Portland is now a shell of its former self. Crime is also on the rise. While it may not be the highest in the country, crime in Oregon's major cities has steadily increased since 2015, creating a sense of unease among residents. Car break-ins, petty thefts, and random acts of violence are becoming more frequent, undermining the sense of safety that once drew people to the area. As crime rates climb, residents are growing increasingly frustrated and fearful, contributing to the exodus of both young professionals and families looking for safer, more affordable places to live. On top of these issues, Oregon is plagued by regular wildfires. Every summer, the state faces the threat of massive blazes that devastate communities, destroy homes, and impact the economy. In 2020 alone, over 1 million acres of land were burned, causing billions of dollars in damages and displacing thousands. Tourism, once a reliable economic driver for the state, is severely impacted when smoke from wildfires blankets the beautiful landscapes, deterring visitors from coming and making it harder for local businesses to thrive. The state's leadership, too, is a major factor in its impending collapse. The local government has been paralyzed by indecisiveness, unable to make the hard decisions needed to steer Oregon out of its economic troubles. Issues like ballooning pension liabilities, a shortage of affordable housing, and a shrinking tax base are only getting worse. There's little confidence in state officials to enact meaningful change, and many fear that without immediate intervention, Oregon's economic and social foundation will crumble. If Oregon doesn't address these growing problems now, the state risks losing its once proud identity. With its green dream fading fast, the pressure is mounting on leaders to act before it's too late. For now, it's a waiting game, and if the state doesn't turn things around soon, it could fall into a downward spiral that's impossible to recover from. This is a state teetering on the edge, and the time to act is now, before it's too late. Number 2. New York. New York, the Empire State, once the symbol of prosperity and opportunity, is now facing a slow but steady decline that could soon push it into full collapse. Despite its cultural power, global influence, and iconic skyline, New York has been battling a mass exodus in recent years. Over 800,000 residents have fled the state, driven away by the unbearable cost of living and a lack of affordable housing. The rise of remote work only accelerated this trend, as many New Yorkers traded sky-high Manhattan rents for suburban mortgages in more affordable states like Florida and Texas. The median home price in New York City is now a staggering $800,000, with prices in Manhattan and Brooklyn soaring even higher, making homeownership an unattainable dream for many. While Wall Street's fortunes can temporarily prop up state revenue, the ripple effects of layoffs and job cuts in key industries like tech and finance are already being felt. These layoffs are not just affecting Wall Street employees, but are spreading throughout the state's economy, fueling anxiety and job insecurity. The high cost of living, coupled with fewer job opportunities, is forcing many to leave in search of a more stable future elsewhere. Public transit, once considered the lifeblood of New York, is also showing signs of decay. With an aging infrastructure and mounting debt, fare hikes and service cuts have put a strain on commuters, making daily life even more difficult for those still living in the city. Crime, which had dipped during the early days of the pandemic, has started to climb again. While some neighborhoods are still considered safe, others have seen an uptick in violence and property crime, tarnishing the city's image as a secure and vibrant metropolis. Media stories about rising crime rates are driving more families and businesses to leave, fearing for their safety. In upstate New York, formerly bustling manufacturing towns now stand as hollow shells of their former selves, struggling to attract new investment or industry. These once thriving communities are now marked by empty storefronts, high unemployment rates, and an ever-growing sense of abandonment. On top of these challenges, New York's pension system is teetering on the brink of disaster. The state's pension obligations continue to grow, placing an enormous financial burden on state resources. If tax revenues continue to dip due to the loss of residents and businesses, the state may be forced to make difficult choices between slashing public services and raising taxes even further. The high property taxes that have driven many out of the state will likely rise again, deepening the economic divide and pushing even more people to leave. Small businesses are struggling as well. In New York City, high commercial rents are driving out local businesses that once gave the city its character. The cost of doing business in New York has skyrocketed, and for many entrepreneurs, the financial strain has become unbearable. The city is no longer the vibrant, entrepreneurial hotspot it once was. Instead, it is becoming a place where only the wealthiest can afford to thrive, leaving a growing divide between the rich and the working class. New York's problems are far-reaching and systemic, and without significant reform, the state could face a full-scale collapse in the coming years. If the outflow of residents and businesses continues, and if the state fails to address its fiscal and social challenges, New York may no longer be the beacon of opportunity it once was. The time to act is now before the state's decline becomes irreversible. Number 3, California. California, once the land of endless opportunity, sun, and innovation, is now grappling with a series of crises that threaten to pull the state under. While its stunning coastline, tech industry, and entertainment capital continue to draw attention, the underlying issues are becoming impossible to ignore. The cost of living in California has skyrocketed, particularly in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, where the average home price often exceeds $1 million. This staggering figure is out of reach for many middle-class families, pushing them further into financial distress. As the housing market grows more expensive, young professionals, families, and retirees are being priced out of the market, with many fleeing to more affordable states. The tech industry, which has long been the driving force behind California's prosperity, has seen massive layoffs in recent years. Over 78,000 jobs were shed in 2023 alone, with the Bay Area being hit hardest. These job losses are a serious blow to the state's economy, which has relied heavily on the tech sector for growth and innovation. As Silicon Valley struggles to maintain its status as a tech hub, the ripple effects are felt throughout the state. Workers in related industries, from real estate to service jobs, are facing the fallout of these layoffs. California's once unshakable status as the global leader in technology is being tested, and many are wondering if the state can weather this storm. In addition to economic instability, California faces the recurring threat of natural disasters, particularly wildfires. The 2022 wildfire season was one of the worst on record, causing billions of dollars in damage, displacing thousands and forcing residents to live with the constant threat of devastation. Wildfires have become a summer tradition, with each year bringing more destruction. These fires not only devastate communities but also wreak havoc on the state's economy, particularly in the tourism and agriculture sectors. The smoke from wildfires regularly blankets the state's iconic landscapes, driving away tourists and putting a strain on local businesses that rely on the influx of visitors. As wildfires grow more intense due to climate change, the state is being left to deal with the financial and human toll. California's infrastructure is also crumbling. The state's legendary freeway system, particularly the 405 and 101, is plagued by gridlock, costing commuters countless hours each year. The daily grind has become a source of frustration for residents who spend hours stuck in traffic, which drains productivity and adds to the overall stress of living in California. Moreover, the state's public transportation system is struggling with outdated infrastructure, resulting in longer wait times, broken systems, and fewer resources allocated for repairs and upgrades. To compound matters, California is dealing with a massive budget shortfall, which peaked at a $38 billion deficit. This has sparked heated debates about cutting essential social programs or raising taxes even higher. Residents are already burdened by high property taxes and the so-called sunshine tax, which makes living in the state an expensive proposition. As the state's revenue continues to dip, more and more Californians are leaving for more affordable states, taking their wealth and talent with them. The state's inability to properly address its budget crisis and growing debt is a ticking time bomb that threatens to destabilize its economy even further. Despite the beauty and allure that California offers, the reality is that it is teetering on the edge of collapse. Between sky-high living costs, wildfires, corporate departures, and a deteriorating infrastructure, the state is struggling to keep up with its own ambitions. If changes aren't made soon, California could fall from the Golden State to a place where only the wealthiest can afford to survive. The time for action is now. California needs a complete overhaul to remain the beacon of opportunity it once was, or else it will face a slow, irreversible decline. Number 4. Kentucky. Kentucky, known for its picturesque horse farms, bourbon distilleries, and scenic Appalachian vistas, is facing an economic and social decline that threatens to unravel the state's fabric. While it's easy to romanticize the rolling hills and traditional Southern charm, Kentucky is struggling under a number of systemic challenges that can no longer be ignored. Once heavily reliant on the coal industry, the state is now grappling with a dramatic economic shift that has left entire communities in a state of crisis. The decline of the coal industry, which was once the backbone of Kentucky's economy, has had a devastating impact on rural areas. With the rise of renewable energy and natural gas, the coal mines that once provided jobs to thousands have closed their doors, leaving behind a workforce with few viable alternatives. Entire counties have seen unemployment rates climb well above the national average, and many families have been forced to leave their homes in search of work. This mass migration of workers, particularly younger generations, has only worsened the state's poverty levels, which hover around 15%, well above the national average. Education in Kentucky is another area of concern. Underfunded schools, teacher shortages, and low literacy rates have created a cycle of educational disadvantage that is difficult to break. The state consistently ranks near the bottom in terms of education, with limited opportunities for its citizens to gain the skills they need to thrive in today's economy. Many of Kentucky's young people, faced with limited job prospects and a lack of educational opportunities, are leaving the state for better prospects elsewhere, further exacerbating the brain drain that has plagued the region for decades. Healthcare in Kentucky is in equally dire straits. Rural hospitals are closing due to financial instability, leaving thousands without access to basic medical care. The state's healthcare system has long struggled with chronic underfunding, and the opioid crisis has only compounded the problem. Kentucky has one of the highest overdose death rates in the nation, and communities are left grappling with the aftermath of addiction, which has devastated families and overwhelmed healthcare providers. The lack of access to healthcare is not only a public health issue, but also an economic one, as it burdens the state's already strained resources and workforce. One of the most troubling aspects of Kentucky's decline is the persistent cycle of poverty that has trapped many of its residents. While the state's rural areas offer unparalleled natural beauty, they also come with few economic opportunities. As agriculture remains one of the only stable industries, many Kentuckians find themselves stuck in low-wage jobs with little room for advancement. For those in cities like Louisville or Lexington, opportunities are limited by the state's overall economic struggles. And while some urban areas have seen growth, they are still facing significant challenges. The divide between Kentucky's rural and urban populations continues to widen, creating a fractured state where inequality and economic hardship reign. With dwindling tax revenues, Kentucky faces difficult decisions about where to allocate resources. Budget constraints force the state government to make impossible choices between education, healthcare, and infrastructure, three critical areas that are in desperate need of investment. Without adequate funding for schools, hospitals, and public services, Kentucky's decline will only accelerate, leaving the state stuck in a vicious cycle of economic stagnation and social disarray. If Kentucky doesn't act now to address these critical issues, the state will continue to sink deeper into an irreversible decline. The problems may seem insurmountable, but they are not beyond repair. However, without bold leadership and immediate action, Kentucky risks becoming a state left behind, trapped by its reliance on outdated industries and underfunded systems. Time is running out, and the people of Kentucky need solutions, fast. Number 5. Illinois. Illinois, once a stronghold of industry and innovation, is now a state struggling with deep financial and social problems that threaten to drag it into collapse. At the heart of Illinois' struggles is Chicago, a global city renowned for its iconic skyline, rich culture, and robust economy. But even Chicago's fame can't hide the mounting issues facing the state. High taxes, a shrinking job market, crumbling infrastructure, and a growing crime problem have combined to create a perfect storm that is driving residents and businesses out of Illinois at an alarming rate. One of the most pressing issues facing Illinois is its tax burden. Property taxes in Illinois are among the highest in the nation, and the state's income taxes aren't far behind. These high taxes are not only burdening homeowners but also stifling economic growth and pushing businesses to relocate. Major corporations like Boeing, Caterpillar, and Citadel have already moved their headquarters out of Illinois in search of more business-friendly environments. The loss of these companies has left a significant gap in the state's economy, resulting in fewer high-paying jobs, reduced tax revenues, and increased pressure on small businesses that remain in the state. This corporate exodus is a key factor in Illinois' financial instability and has contributed to the state's ongoing budget crisis. Illinois is also facing a crippling pension crisis. The state's pension system is underfunded to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, and its obligations continue to grow each year. This massive pension debt looms over the state like a shadow, threatening to swallow up an ever-growing portion of the state budget. As tax revenues fall and the population shrinks, Illinois may soon find itself unable to meet these pension obligations without drastic cuts to public services or massive tax increases, both of which would only exacerbate the state's problems. If Illinois doesn't find a way to address its pension crisis, the state will face a financial collapse that could leave many public employees and retirees without their promised benefits. Another major issue is crime, particularly in Chicago. While crime rates may be lower than in some other major cities, Chicago's violence problem continues to undermine the city's reputation and drive residents out. Shootings, gang violence, and drug-related crimes are persistent issues that have affected local communities, businesses, and public safety. The rising crime rates in certain neighborhoods have made many families feel unsafe, contributing to an exodus of middle-class residents seeking safer living conditions in neighboring states. The perception of crime, even in areas that are relatively safe, is enough to make people question whether it's worth staying in Illinois. On top of these issues, Illinois' infrastructure is in disrepair. Many of the state's roads, bridges, and public transportation systems are aging and in need of significant investment. But with the state's budget stretched thin and its debt piling up, the money needed for repairs simply isn't there. Driving outside of Chicago, you'll quickly notice the deteriorating roads and bridges that haven't seen repairs in years. The lack of investment in infrastructure not only affects daily life, but also hinders Illinois' ability to attract new businesses and workers who are looking for a place with modern, reliable services. The state's education system is also in trouble. Public schools, particularly in rural and underfunded urban areas, are plagued by budget shortfalls and a lack of resources. Teacher shortages, overcrowded classrooms, and outdated facilities have become the norm for many students. The quality of education has declined, leaving many students unprepared for the workforce and contributing to the state's growing brain drain as college graduates leave Illinois for states with better opportunities. Illinois is at a crossroads, and its future is uncertain. If the state continues on its current path, facing high taxes, massive debt, rising crime, and crumbling infrastructure, it may reach a point of no return. But the situation isn't beyond repair. Bold leadership, fiscal reform, and a commitment to investing in infrastructure and education could turn Illinois around. However, if the state continues to ignore its problems, Illinois will remain in a precarious position, teetering on the edge of collapse. The time for action is now, or the state risks losing everything it once stood for. Number 6. West Virginia. West Virginia, with its breathtaking Appalachian landscapes and historic coal towns, is a state caught between its rich past and an uncertain future. Once the heart of the coal industry, West Virginia has seen its primary economic driver fade, and the state is now grappling with a series of challenges that threaten to derail its future. Despite its natural beauty and cultural heritage, West Virginia is struggling to adapt to the changing economy, leaving its residents vulnerable to a looming collapse. The decline of the coal industry has been devastating for West Virginia. Once the backbone of the state's economy, coal mining has seen a sharp drop in demand as the country moves toward cleaner energy sources and natural gas becomes more dominant. Entire communities that once thrived on coal are now left with few job prospects. Unemployment rates in rural areas are far higher than the national average, and many West Virginians are being forced to leave their homes in search of stable employment. This exodus of workers, particularly young people, has left a void in the state's labor force and contributed to its economic stagnation. In addition to the economic downturn, West Virginia is grappling with one of the worst opioid crises in the country. The state has the highest overdose death rate in the nation, and the toll this epidemic has taken on families and communities is staggering. The healthcare system is overwhelmed, with rural hospitals struggling to stay open and mental health services stretched to their limits. Many areas of West Virginia have become healthcare deserts, with residents having to travel hours for basic medical care. This crisis not only devastates families, but also contributes to the state's declining workforce, as many people are unable to work or are incapacitated by addiction. West Virginia's education system is also in dire need of reform. The state has one of the lowest high school graduation rates in the country, and its schools are chronically underfunded. Rural schools in particular suffer from a lack of resources, outdated facilities, and teacher shortages. Low literacy rates and limited access to higher education opportunities mean that many young people in the state face a future of limited job prospects. The brain drain is a growing problem, with educated young professionals leaving the state for better opportunities elsewhere, leaving behind a shrinking pool of talent to fuel economic growth. Infrastructure in West Virginia is another critical issue. Many of the state's roads, bridges, and public buildings are in desperate need of repair. Potholes, crumbling bridges, and outdated roads are common sights, particularly in the more rural parts of the state. The lack of investment in infrastructure has made West Virginia less competitive, making it harder to attract businesses or retain residents. While some state leaders have pushed for improvement, the lack of funding and political will has kept these vital projects on the back burner. West Virginia's reliance on coal, combined with the opioid epidemic, an underfunded education system, and failing infrastructure, has put the state in a precarious position. The state's natural beauty may draw in tourists, but it is no longer enough to sustain a thriving economy. West Virginia needs to diversify its economy and invest in clean energy, healthcare, education, and infrastructure to avoid a complete collapse. Without bold action, however, the state risks being left behind, caught in an endless cycle of decline that will continue to affect its residents for generations to come. The clock is ticking for West Virginia. If the state doesn't take decisive action soon, it will find itself facing an even steeper decline. The future may seem bleak, but with the right leadership and reforms, West Virginia can still reverse its fortunes. Time is running out, and the question remains, will West Virginia take the steps needed to rebuild its economy, or will it continue to slide into irrelevance? The state's survival depends on the choices made today. Number 7. New Jersey. New Jersey, often overshadowed by its proximity to the economic powerhouse of New York City, is a state facing its own severe set of challenges that threaten its stability. Known for its iconic shorelines, diners, and as the home of some of the nation's wealthiest communities, New Jersey is quickly unraveling under the weight of high taxes, a shrinking tax base, and crumbling infrastructure. Once a thriving state with diverse industries, New Jersey is now struggling to stay afloat in the face of overwhelming fiscal crises, economic volatility, and an exodus of residents seeking more affordable alternatives. A significant burden that New Jersey faces is its astronomical property taxes. The state is notorious for having the highest property taxes in the nation, which has placed immense pressure on homeowners and businesses alike. For many, the high tax burden is a serious deterrent to staying in the state. Residents are now leaving in droves, seeking relief in states with more favorable tax structures. This outflow of residents is not only shrinking New Jersey's population, but also reducing the state's tax revenue, creating a vicious cycle that makes it harder for the state to fund essential services or maintain infrastructure. Adding to New Jersey's troubles is its shaky economy. While the state still boasts strong industries like pharmaceuticals, financial services, and tourism, these sectors are increasingly volatile. The pharmaceutical industry, for instance, has seen massive job cuts as companies move operations to states with fewer regulations and lower operational costs. The state's reliance on a few key industries has left it vulnerable to economic shifts, making it difficult for New Jersey to maintain economic stability. Meanwhile, Atlantic City's once thriving casino industry is in decline, with closures and bankruptcies further undermining the state's economic standing. New Jersey's fiscal issues are compounded by its massive pension debt. The state's pension system is unsustainable, with analysts warning that it is on the verge of collapse. As pension obligations grow, the state's ability to provide basic services, invest in infrastructure, or keep taxes low becomes increasingly difficult. Without significant pension reform, the state could face a crippling financial crisis, leaving it unable to meet the needs of its residents or provide essential public services. Public infrastructure, particularly transportation, is another area where New Jersey is faltering. Its roadways, rail systems, and bridges are aging, and despite numerous calls for repairs and upgrades, funding for these projects is limited. The state's aging public transit system struggles with overcrowding and delays, further frustrating residents who rely on it for daily commuting. Meanwhile, New Jersey's highways are notorious for congestion, with traffic jams that drain productivity and increase pollution. These infrastructure issues make the state less competitive and more difficult to navigate, especially for businesses and commuters. New Jersey's high cost of living, coupled with deteriorating infrastructure, poor fiscal management, and a lack of economic diversification, has created a perfect storm. The state's middle class is shrinking, and its wealthier residents are fleeing to more tax-friendly states. Small businesses are being squeezed by high operational costs, and many are unable to thrive due to the state's unwelcoming business environment. As the tax base shrinks and expenses rise, the state is left in a precarious position, unable to fund necessary reforms or improvements. If New Jersey doesn't take drastic action soon, it will continue to spiral into economic decline. The state's reliance on outdated industries, high taxes, and crumbling infrastructure is unsustainable. Without reform and a shift towards more sustainable practices, New Jersey risks becoming a state where only the wealthiest can afford to live, leaving the majority of residents struggling to survive. The future of New Jersey depends on the decisions made today. Time is running out for this once prosperous state, and if change doesn't come soon, the collapse will be inevitable. Number 8. Rhode Island. Rhode Island, the smallest state in the U.S., may seem charming at first glance with its coastal beauty and quaint towns. But beneath the surface, it's struggling with deep-rooted economic and fiscal issues that are slowly pulling the state toward collapse. Despite its picturesque landscapes and rich history, Rhode Island is plagued by high costs of living, stagnating wages, and a declining business climate that's driving both residents and companies out of the state. One of the primary issues facing Rhode Island is its skyrocketing housing costs. With a median single-family home price approaching $400,000, Rhode Island's real estate market is pricing out many middle-income families. The state is too small for its real estate prices to be this high, leaving many residents to question whether staying in Rhode Island is worth the financial strain. High property taxes, second only to New Jersey, add to the burden, taking a larger portion of residents' incomes and making it even harder to live in the state. These taxes also drive away potential home buyers, further stalling the local economy and making it increasingly difficult for residents to achieve financial stability. The business climate in Rhode Island is also under severe pressure. The state has earned a reputation for being unfriendly to startups and new businesses. High taxes, burdensome regulations, and a lack of attractive incentives make Rhode Island less appealing to entrepreneurs compared to neighboring states like Massachusetts and New Hampshire. As a result, many businesses are either moving out or deciding not to establish themselves in the state at all. This leaves Rhode Island with a stagnant job market, low investment opportunities, and a shrinking economy. While some industries like tourism and healthcare remain essential to Rhode Island's economy, they are not enough to sustain long-term growth or offset the decline in other sectors. In addition to these economic struggles, Rhode Island is also battling a stagnant labor market. Many young professionals are fleeing the state in search of better job prospects in more dynamic regions. The lack of a diverse and robust job market has made Rhode Island less attractive to college graduates and skilled workers, contributing to a growing brain drain. This in turn reduces the state's ability to foster innovation, attract businesses, or improve its infrastructure. As the younger, more educated population leaves, Rhode Island is left with a shrinking workforce and its economic future grows even more uncertain. Rhode Island's fiscal woes are compounded by its budget constraints. Despite efforts to revitalize Providence with cultural initiatives and tech incubators, the state has struggled to make meaningful investments in its infrastructure or address its long-term financial obligations. The state's pensions are underfunded and its public services are under-resourced, leaving many residents feeling the impact in the form of crumbling roads, poor public transportation, and a lack of investment in vital infrastructure projects. Rhode Island's infrastructure, including its roads and public transportation, is in dire need of repair, but the state is often unable to provide the necessary funding to make those improvements. This lack of investment creates long-term inefficiencies that negatively affect business and daily life. Rhode Island also faces a significant challenge in its aging population. As younger generations leave the state in search of better opportunities, the state's older population continues to grow. This demographic shift is placing additional strain on healthcare services, pensions, and social programs, which are already stretched thin. The result is a cycle of increasing poverty and diminishing services, which is only exacerbating the state's decline. The combination of high living costs, an unfriendly business climate, a stagnant labor market, and crumbling infrastructure has left Rhode Island in a vulnerable position. If the state does not address these systemic issues, it will continue to slide into decline, losing its competitiveness and becoming increasingly unaffordable for its residents. Rhode Island needs bold leadership, economic diversification, and a reinvestment in infrastructure to avoid falling further behind. Without substantial reform and action, Rhode Island could soon become a state left behind, struggling to compete in a rapidly changing world. Time is running out, and unless change comes soon, Rhode Island risks becoming another example of what happens when a state fails to adapt to the challenges of the modern world. Number 9. Mississippi. Mississippi, while known for its southern charm and rich cultural heritage, faces severe economic and social challenges that threaten its future. The state consistently ranks at the bottom for median household income, barely surpassing $45,000, and has one of the highest poverty rates in the nation. This persistent poverty, especially in rural areas, is driven by a lack of diverse job opportunities. Agriculture remains the state's economic cornerstone, but it can't support the growing need for jobs in other sectors. The job market is stagnant, with underemployment widespread. Many workers are stuck in low-wage, low-skill jobs that don't provide a path to financial stability. Meanwhile, education in Mississippi is underfunded, with low graduation rates and a lack of resources in schools, further limiting future opportunities. The state's brain drain continues as young professionals leave in search of better prospects elsewhere, exacerbating the skills gap and further limiting the potential for growth. Healthcare is another major issue, with rural hospitals closing due to financial instability. Mississippi's high obesity rate and healthcare crisis strain already limited resources, further hurting the state's overall health outcomes. Combined with crumbling infrastructure, Mississippi faces an uphill battle to attract new businesses or retain its workforce. If the state doesn't address these deep-rooted issues, it could continue to slide further into decline, leaving its residents trapped in a cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. Number 10. Louisiana. Louisiana's future is uncertain, as it faces an overwhelming combination of environmental, economic, and social challenges. Hurricanes, which are an annual threat, have become more destructive in recent years, exacerbated by climate change. In 2021, Hurricane Ida caused over $75 billion in damage, displacing thousands and leaving communities in ruins. The state's sinking coastline and rising sea levels only increase the vulnerability of the region. Recovery efforts from past disasters are slow, and many communities remain in a constant state of rebuilding. Louisiana's economy is heavily dependent on oil and gas, which leaves the state vulnerable to market fluctuations. When oil prices drop or regulations increase, the local economy takes a major hit, leading to layoffs and financial instability. The state's reliance on this industry, despite efforts to diversify, continues to undermine long-term economic growth. With over 18% of the population living in poverty and many areas struggling with high crime rates, Louisiana also faces systemic social issues. Education and healthcare systems are underfunded, and rural areas suffer from a lack of access to both. As more young people leave in search of better opportunities, the state is losing its workforce, which further limits its potential for recovery. Without decisive action and diversification of its economy, Louisiana's decline could continue, leaving it struggling to maintain its cultural and economic strength. The first 10 states on the brink of collapse in 2025 are facing deep, interconnected challenges: economic instability, rising crime, deteriorating infrastructure, and failing public systems. These states, if left unchecked, will only worsen, and their residents will feel the effects most. But you don't have to wait for the worst to happen. Whether you live in one of these states or not, now is the time to take action. Start preparing for the worst by securing your financial future, diversifying your income, and considering relocation if necessary. Advocate for change in your community and demand better leadership to address these growing crises. Hope alone isn't enough. Preparation and action are key. The time to act is now. Take steps today to safeguard your future, because in times of uncertainty, being prepared is the best way to ensure security for you and your family.